Talking business now, the average debt ratio in Sub-Saharan Africa has almost doubled in just a decade, from 30% of gross domestic product at the end of 2013 to almost 60% of GDP by the end of 2022. This increase has also made repaying these debts much costlier. This has led to concerns that these countries might be at high risk of debt default. News Central's Perpetua Fasanmi-Peter was at a stakeholders meeting where the risk of selected African countries, especially Nigeria, was assessed.
As of 2022, more than half of the low-income countries in sub-Saharan Africa were assessed by the IMF to be at high risk or already in debt distress. This sparked concern of a looming debt crisis in the region. This is further amplified by ratings downgrade which swept through the region.
I do believe that the credit rating trend is completely opened up, that there is an amplifying of the risk, possibly to an extent that isn't fully justified.
The region's ratio of interest payments to revenue, a key metric to assess debt servicing capacity and predict the risk of a fiscal crisis, has more than doubled since the early 2010s and is now close to 4 times the ratio in advanced economies. But the head of Nigeria's debt management believes Nigeria's debt remains sustainable.
Let me say, one of the things you see is that we don't have the maturities bunched up. They're spread out over a number of years, and the highest amount in any 1 year is $1.5 billion. So when I hear the Nigerian government talking about this debt growth can we pay, I'm like, all of it is not due in 1 day or in 1 year. It is spread out. Okay, so that's the external debt. For the domestic debt as well, one of the things we've been able to do is to develop the market to where we actually have 30-year bonds. So our maturities are spread out over several tenors, all the way from 90 days to 30 years. And 70% of that portfolio is made up of long term. Again, we have limits on maturities for each year. The reason is we don't want too much maturing in 1 year and begin to panic.
Drawing from Ghana's experience, Professor Godfred insisted that countries do not only exist for creditors.
You can say that Nigeria is able to pay their debt, will be able to pay their debt, but Nigeria exists for more than just creditors. So in the case of Ghana, after satisfying interest payment, and we couldn't even have enough to pay workers. Okay. So if you add compensation of workers and interest payment, that was 110% of the revenue. If Ghana were to be a business, that would have been a Ponzi scheme, right?
Responding to more questions, Parts clarified that Nigeria's budget deficits were not the problem, but Nigeria's poor revenue generation.
So why do we have these huge deficits in the budget? You can say, spend what you have now, reduce your expenditure. The truth is that if you want to tie your receipts to your expenditure, you may not have money for capital. And then for overheads, which are things like personnel costs, you may not have enough money to cover that. So where's the real issue? It has to do with revenues. So not only have revenues been low, we have actually underperformed relative to the budget. So each year we have our estimate for revenues, which are low already, but we then underperform. So what does that happen? We don't borrow more than is approved in the budget, but what then happens? Your debt service is growing because you are doing all the borrowing.
While the call for revenue generation stood out as a panacea for a debt crisis, Professor Godfred's quote, "Nigeria exists for more than creditors," brought another dynamic into the debt sustainability conversation. Perpetua Fasanmi-Peter reporting for News Central.